Welcome to the NJ Criminal Podcast.
Welcome back to New Jersey Criminal Podcast. I'm here today with Jim Leonard. Jim, welcome.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. You and I go back, a couple decades?
We probably go back to 1999, I would guess, at the Philadelphia DA's office when you were a young ADA and I was probably at that time a first-year intern.
You were my intern.
I was your intern.
Okay, so all
Yes.
the people out there that know Jim and know how famous he is now, I can say I knew you when.
Absolutely. I would carry your bags to court.
Exactly.
If I remember
coffee,
correctly. Yes.
Coffee.
Probably not good coffee, but.
Well, not then. So, after the DA's office, tell me what you did.
So I graduated Villanova Law School 2001, took and passed the bar, and I was immediately working with a criminal defense solo practitioner in Camden County for about 9 or 10 months. And then at the age of 28 in 2002, I went out on my own with no clients, no money.
What the hell were you thinking?
Apparently I wasn't thinking, but I, took a shot on myself, bet on myself, and put in a lot of hard work and started a practice that was based out of Camden County. It was exclusively criminal defense work, felonies, municipal court, et cetera. And gradually it built itself up. I started doing work in Atlantic County, which is where I was born and raised, where I had family and a lot of friends. And so I was kind of between Atlantic and Camden. I got a lot of pretty big cases along the way. Early on, I was involved with Little Kim, the rapper. I think that was 2005, 2006. But
how did that, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but how did you score a client like Little Kim that early in your career?
So I represented a very well-known and prominent organized crime figure from Philadelphia that I had a relationship with. He was already in custody. He was in federal prison. So I don't want to say I represented him, but I had a relationship with him. I was representing other people in that world and developed a relationship with him. And he was incarcerated with people from Brooklyn, New York that she had grown up with and that had worked with, et cetera. And she at the time was incarcerated in Philadelphia. So when I was visiting him, they were asking him to find a local attorney that could help her while she was in Philadelphia. So I kind of got the assignment. I went to visit her in the Federal Detention Center in Philadelphia. She had no idea who I was. I mentioned all the right names. She checked it out. I told her, if you want me to come back and help, here's my number. And they called me 2 days later. She wants you to come back. And I was visiting with her, once every week and a half, 2 weeks.
The rest is history.
The rest is history. And so that's how I got involved with her. That was, I'm going to say 2005, 2006, in that time frame. Was working out of Atlantic County. I had an office in Atlantic County, had an office in Camden County, running back and forth. It was a lot of work. I eventually moved primarily to Atlantic, got rid of the Camden office, and then really hunkered down here in Atlantic City and gave it a shot.
Here you are.
Here I am.
And we're sitting in your office under the watchful eye of Frank Sinatra.
I like that.
Gorgeous.
Yes.
Photo, your picture.
Chairman of the board.
Right. I get it. So, tell me, I know that many have said that maybe Little Kim was the most famous or Teresa was the most famous, but I wanted to pick your brain on another case that you had mentioned to me before we went on tape today, that an important anniversary has just passed for. Tell us about that.
So while they may be the most famous people that I've been involved with, the most infamous case that I've ever had any contact with was what is referred to as the West Atlantic City murders of 4 women They've been referred to in media and in documentaries and in programs as women that were prostitutes. Over the years, anytime I've ever talked about this, they were women. Some of them were mothers. They were people's sisters, daughters. These were women. So I don't like to label them as, whatever they may or may not have been doing in their lives. They were important people to different people in their lives. So 4 young women were found murdered in West Atlantic City, which is right outside of Atlantic City, kind of on the border of Pleasantville and Atlantic City. It's called West Atlantic City. It's ironically Egg Harbor Township. That's actually the city where it is. But 4 women were found behind a stretch of motels in an area that runs parallel between the Black Horse Pike and the Atlantic City Expressway. And they were found in a drainage ditch, quite a distance from one another, but in close proximity. Each of them were without shoes, and all of them were facing in the direction of the east, which would have been towards Atlantic City. And they were found by, I believe it was 2 or 3 women that typically would exercise and walk the path out there. And one day they were walking and they found a body and they couldn't believe it. And then they kept walking, I guess, to go get help. And they found another body and another body. And they found 4 when it was all said and done, within maybe 100 yards of one another. Spaced out.
Right.
Police, Egg Harbor Township Police, Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office, New Jersey State Police, FBI. This was a big deal. 4 dead bodies, 4 young women. It was an explosive case that I would say captivated not just the region, but became a national story at the time. And I was a criminal defense attorney here in Atlantic County. I was in the criminal courts every day. I had absolutely nothing to do with the case when it happened in November. Shortly after they found the bodies, they identified someone that they couched as a person of interest. It was a man from Salem County who at the time was working as a handyman in one of those motels that the bodies were found in close proximity to. So
a lot of pressure on law enforcement in these types of cases to identify someone quickly and wrap it up.
And that's a problem that plagued this case and this investigation for a number of years, because they identified this person as a person of interest. He ultimately was arrested and charged with an invasion of privacy case out of Salem County, which I believe was either a 3rd or 4th degree. It was a relatively insignificant case. He was originally represented by another attorney who I believe was from Salem County, and at some point they parted ways and I got involved. And I want to tell this story because I think you will appreciate this, and I think your listeners will as well. When I was called and asked by his family to go meet him, he was in the Salem County Jail. So I traveled there, and if I remember correctly, it was on a Saturday, and I went down there to meet this individual. Everything I had read about him was that they weren't calling him the killer, but they were strongly suggesting that he was. So I've been doing this for, at that time, this was now into 2007. So I'd been a lawyer for almost 6 years. I'd been
Still a baby lawyer.
Still a baby
right?
lawyer.
Yeah.
I'd been around the block enough, I thought. So when I went to visit him at the prison, or the Salem County Jail, they gave me a device that I had to take with me to the visit. And they said, it's some sort of a radio transmitter, and you have to keep it upright, put it on the table during the visit. And if there's any sort of like a disturbance and it gets knocked over, that way we will basically come rescue you. And I chuckled.
Right.
I said, I don't think that's necessary. They said, well, you're not allowed to see him if you don't take that with you. So now I'm figuring, what am I getting myself into? Who is this? Is this going to be like Hannibal Lecter?
Right, exactly. I was just going to say.
Attacking me.
Yeah.
So I go, I have the device, I put it on the table, and they bring in this guy. And he comes in, he introduces himself to me, soft-spoken, soft eyes, and I'm not being dramatic. These are my observations. His eyes told me he's not capable of strangling 4 women and dumping their bodies. It just didn't look to be capable. Right. My immediate reaction was, there's no way this guy killed these women. It's impossible. My immediate reaction. We spent an hour and a half, and by the time we're done, I was 100% convinced there's no way he did this. He's not capable. You would think somebody that was capable of doing something like that you would be able to detect something missing from their DNA that said, that person gives me the chills. I could see it. I didn't see it.
And although you were a young attorney, you had been around the block enough times to...
I thought so.
Right. And to identify that. And
you get that gut feeling as a lawyer, right? You get that gut feeling, and my gut feeling said, this is not the guy. So ironically, as we're leaving, we shake hands. I agree to take the case. And the funny part of the story is I take the device and remove it from the table and then eventually put it on the chair next to me, like face down. Mm-hmm. So me and him are just talking. He's not going to attack me. Mm-hmm. I figure this device, it's not even in my mind anymore. It's face down.
I'd be worrying it was recording.
I was definitely not worried about that because it was the way it was set up. It didn't have that appearance. But all of a sudden, I hear this noise that is getting louder and louder. And he says to me, what's that noise? I said, I don't know. What's that noise? The only way I could describe it is it sounded like horses running, like there was thump. It was getting louder. And out of the corner of my eye, I see officers in riot gear, SWAT gear, shields and helmets approaching our little room. And I'm waving them off like,
"Oh, good, we're good.
We're good."
Yeah.
And they come and they fling the door open and, pull him out. And I said, I'm screaming like, guys, the thing's right here. It's all good. Mm-hmm. And he says to me, you understand? You see what I'm dealing with? This is ridiculous. So as a young lawyer, I really wanted to get involved in this case because I believed that this is somebody that was innocent. Even though he wasn't charged with the murders, it was going in that direction.
Handwriting was on the wall.
Handwriting was on the wall. And I really wanted to get involved. I recognized that this was a case that could catapult a 32-year-old, young, ambitious criminal defense attorney into a different, stratosphere.
And I know you well enough to know also that you wanted to do good by this guy.
100%, because I saw the press coverage. I saw that's the conditions that he's in there with. He's not a guy that should have been incarcerated on a 3rd or 4th degree invasion of privacy charge. And I now look back on it and I regret something that I did. I referred to his bail publicly as a ransom. And the judge at the time, I don't recall his name. He was an older gentleman in Salem County. He was a gentleman, it was a really good guy. And he took umbrage to that. And he communicated that dissatisfaction to Judge Garofalo, who was our presiding judge in Atlantic at that time. And
you have him on the show.
And great guy. And Judge Garofalo actually called me into chambers one day and said, look, you always have to advocate for your client. but you kind of made the judge look bad. It's not a ransom. You shouldn't have said that. And I look back on it now and I regret it. It was aggressive. I was young. I was ready to go. Maybe it wasn't a ransom, but it was
excessively high.
Excessively high, right? So long story short, I ended up getting him released from the Salem County Jail shortly thereafter. So the case in Atlantic County, the investigation is progressing. And I don't remember the actual time frame, but I'm sorry. He's still in the Salem County system at this point. And Atlantic County brings us, ironically, in before Judge Garofalo in 2007. So everything I'm describing to you is happening from April 2007 to June of 2007. That's the time frame that I got involved in. June of 2007, we go in front of Judge Garofalo, and the DNA, the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office, is basically, they want him to provide his DNA.
Pre-charging.
Pre-charging.
There's a mechanism for that in New Jersey.
We said, you can have it. Sure. You don't need to subpoena it. You don't need to put on this big show. You can have it. Now, full disclosure, by this point, we had already been on 48 hours. We had already kind of made the rounds, and I was in virtually every newspaper.
You're not afraid of the media, I've noticed.
I'm not afraid of the media. And I have a different view of the media today than I did then, which is a story for another day.
We'll bring you back another day.
That's a good one. But so by this point, there was a lot of theatrics going on. We volunteered his DNA. I volunteered a polygraph for him. We were that convinced he had nothing to do with it. Just as a note, because the story is going to go in a different direction in a second, that was June of 2007. They've yet to provide the DNA results from what we gave them. So you can draw your own conclusion that in 14 years, the DNA didn't match.
I think we would have heard by now.
They would have gotten to it. Right. Or what I believe is there wasn't a viable sample to compare the DNA to.
Could be a possibility.
It was a very likely just a big show, okay?
People expect DNA.
Right, so at the end of the day, I eventually get him released from Salem County, and Salem County matter is behind us. There is another woman that comes forward. She is billed as the fifth woman that got away. She charges him with strangulation, this, that, and the third. I get involved in that case. She is very specific on the dates of when things happened. Ironically and sadly for her, she was incarcerated in the Atlantic County Jail at the time of the incident, which means it didn't happen. So that case went away. And as time went on and on, the Atlantic County investigation started to get colder. And you would go from the 1-year anniversary to the 2-year anniversary to a 5-year, and we're at the 15-year mark.
Just announced the 15th year.
My client, and I'm not going to put his name out there because he's a civilian, this individual had nothing to do with it. And they know it, and it's a shame that his name got plastered everywhere when it did. So we did 48 hours. We did an A&E documentary that was multi-parts. I can't even tell you, we did Good Morning America. We made our rounds, okay? So by about 2008, we had been out there with saying he was innocent, et cetera. So there was...
Because he had not been publicly cleared.
He had not been... He still is not publicly cleared.
Got it.
So hopefully anybody listening to your podcast, I'm clearing him.
Got it.
And if anybody has a problem with it, they can come on your podcast and say different. He was not the guy then. He's not the guy today. He's never going to be the guy. He's living a good life, and that's that. So, 2008, it was, I want to say it was sometime in the summer or fall. I took a very rare day where I said to my office, don't bother me today. I'm going to be off the grid. I was going to an event in Cape May, Congress Hall. I had been invited to meet Rudy Giuliani. Full disclosure, this is Rudy Giuliani, 7 years removed from 9/11, running for president, not Rudy Giuliani, Trump, different guy.
Understood.
Different guy. I want to put that out.
Different show, too. We can talk about that on another.
So, but I was honored to be at this event, to meet him. I wanted to spend the day. I just wanted a day away from the office. Told them, don't call me unless it's important. Now, back up. Just remember that point because it's a placeholder. Mm-hmm. There was a woman, and I did not want to refer to the 4 deceased women as sex workers, but there was a woman who is a sex worker who was all over this case on all of the same documentaries, in media reports, and she was extremely well known at the time here in Atlantic City. If you were an Atlantic City cop, lawyer, what have you, this woman was very well known, okay? So we are sitting a half a block away from Pacific Avenue. It's where that sort of thing happens, and that is where the allegations were that these women were ultimately picked up and things happened elsewhere. One day I'm sitting at a red light, literally half a block away. And
from where we're sitting right now.
From where we're sitting right now. And I'm just daydreaming in a red light, and I get a knock on my window. And I look, and it's this woman. She asked me to roll down the window. Now.
Yeah. Did you?
Now. She's a known prostitute. So you don't want anybody to see you talking with her leaning into your window because it looks like you're involved in a, you know. So I said, listen, we're not doing this. I said, my office is a block away. You can come up there and you can see me in the office and you can come right now. I give her the address. I go park my car. I see her walking down the street. She comes up. She says, I believe I made a mistake in identifying your client. So I said, well, I think you made a mistake too. I said, but what are you telling me for? You should be the same way that you put it out there. You should bring it back. She said, well, if you want me to, I'll do that. So I called a press conference. Literally 15 feet from where we're sitting now, I had my client, this woman, and I had the husband of one of the dead women. And we had a press conference that included all the local media, including the Philadelphia, New York. We had national media. It was a big deal. She came out and said, this is not the guy. But I will tell you that while they were setting their cameras up, I saw her studying this guy, studying him as if she was going to paint a picture. She stared at every feature on him. And I saw her talking to herself, and our eyes met one another. And she said, it's not him. It's not him. This happened right here in this office. So we have this press conference, and that's that. So I say to her, listen, if you ever have any information or you ever come across anybody that you think, come to me. You know where I am. Come to the office, whatever. She gave me her phone number, etc. So one of the things that was very interesting, because as lawyers, we deal with timelines and we deal with facts.
Every
right?
case I've handled, whether it's been as a prosecutor or a defense attorney, establish the timeline.
Okay. So they find the bodies, I believe it was like November 20th. Articles are being written the next day. One article in particular, and I want to say it was either the New York Post or Daily News, interviews this woman that I'm referring to, she's a prostitute. I'm not going to mention her name, but she was a prostitute.
Before or after the press conference?
This is the day after they find the bodies.
Got it. Okay.
Before I'm even involved in the case.
Okay.
This is the next day. She tells the story that she's another woman that says, I was with this guy. He had a foot fetish. Remember, none of these women are wearing shoes. I was with this guy. He told me he did really bad things and he wanted my shoes. So she's telling you the story that she was with the guy that killed those 4 women. She gives a description of him. Now, this is a very important part. We're going to jump ahead back to Rudy Giuliani and that there's a connection. So she gives a description to the New York Post. She describes him as having a scruffy beard. She describes him as wearing dark sunglasses. She describes him as having a little bit of like a beer belly, if I remember the description. And here's like the kicker. She described him as wearing a black baseball hat with like a gold something on it, okay? Just put that aside. Now, as the lawyer for him, I had devoured all the information that I could possibly get my hands on about I'd read every article, I printed them out, I had a file. He wasn't even charged yet, but I wanted every piece of information so in the event that he was charged, I was building my case. Fast forward to the Rudy Giuliani day. Don't bother me, don't call me, nothing. My office calls. What? I told you not to call me. This woman, I'm not going to mention her name, is here physically in the office. She said it's a 911. She has to speak to you today. Really? Yes. Get on the phone. What's up? He's here. Who's here? The guy that I was talking about, he's in Atlantic City right now. What are you talking about? He's here. He came to see me. He's here. He came to see you. He's in Atlantic City right now. I said, I want to be clear that we're talking about this. The guy that I gave the interview about, who took my shoes, he's in Atlantic City right now, and I'm supposed to go see him later tonight. What?
Don't forget to subscribe and like the show on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere you listen.